All right, guys, we're going to get this show started here in a matter of moments. Do me a favor and hit the like button and share the show wherever you're watching. We are retweeting it now across our Twitter accounts. A lot we're going to cover on today's program. The Johnson & Johnson vaccinations being put on pause because of these blood clots, that's something we got to talk about. And it's something we got to talk about because I'm concerned that this news is going to be a reason why some folks choose not to take the vaccine. We'll talk about that. We'll talk how it impacts travel and some of these reopening stocks, the airline stocks. That's going to be the lead of today's show. I also want to talk about the lawsuit that's going on between the Omni Hotel and the city of Charlottesville. That lawsuit is a very slippery slope for the city of Charlottesville. If the Omni Hotel is successful, and it very well could be successful, in pushing down its assessment and its tax exposure, I can assure you this will be a tactic utilized by other commercial real estate owners in the city of Charlottesville. And let's remember that the budget in the city of Charlottesville is strapped right now. So the city, the municipality itself, needs all the help it can get from a revenue standpoint. I got to follow this one closely. Look, I'll tell you, I own nearly 20,000 square feet of commercial real estate. I'm a small guy, a small potato in the grand scheme of landlords. I'm a very small potato, and the taxes we pay on this real estate is substantial. I mean, substantial taxes. I'm talking like every 6 months, close to 10K, over 20K a year, close to, 30,000 when you're including the residential holdings. So real estate tax is a big deal for many landlords in the community. The Omni is suing the city. We'll talk about that. We will talk about the front porch, the music venue, the classroom venue, the fantastic venue on the downtown mall opening for in-person classes. We'll talk about a cyclist who died on Ivy Road. Ugh, too much of this cycling injury and runner injury around this community. We'll talk about that. Trey Murphy has declared for the NBA draft. He has not hired an agent, but Trey Murphy Three Sticks has declared for the NBA draft. That's a topic I'll bring up on today's show, and we'll spend some time with our good friend Alex Erpy, the CEO of Emergent Financial Services, on the program in about 20 minutes. Give the show a like and a share if you could. Hit that like button. That would mean the world to us, guys. Share it to your friends. That's the only thing we ask of you on today's program. Johnny Ornalis, thank you for doing that. Vanessa Parkhill, hello. Marcy Gates, I have not forgotten about that message. It is coming. It is coming. It is coming. Lauren, thank you for doing that. We appreciate you, Lauren. Jade Perecki, thank you for that. Michael Johnson, thank you for liking the show. Give it a like and a share. We'll start here in about 20 seconds on the program. J-Dubs, I'm ready to rock and roll when you are, homie.
Quiet on the set.
Good Tuesday afternoon, guys. My name is Jerry Miller, and welcome to the I Love CVille show. Thank you for joining us. We're live in Charlottesville, across Central Virginia, the Commonwealth, the country, and the world on the I Love CVille network. It's a dynamic platform, so you can interact with the show by leaving your comments on all the social media platforms. I will relay those comments and the perspective on air. Oftentimes, the comments change the pace and tempo and topic of the show. A lot we're going to cover on today's program, including the pause of the J&J vaccination. The J&J vaccination is the one-shot vaccine. and impacting the supply chain of vaccinations by removing one of the three options is going to have an impact on the country, no doubt about it. Even more so, I'm concerned the impact it's going to have on those individuals that were hesitant to get this vaccine in the first place. That's going to be the lead of the show. We're also going to cover on today's program the lawsuit that's emerged between the Omni Hotel and the city of Charlottesville over real estate taxes and $95,000 of overcharging the hotel, Omni officials say, in taxes. I'm going to look at this from a micro standpoint and how it applies to the Omni. And then I'm going to ask this question. If the Omni is successful in minimizing its tax exposure with the city of Charlottesville, what is this going to do from an influence standpoint for other property owners, commercial owners around the city? How is that going to impact the municipality, a municipality that's budget strapped coming out of COVID? This is a big deal right here. And it's a big deal that could snowball into something even larger. We're going to try to get ahead of that on the I Love CVille show today. Trey Murphy III has declared for the NBA draft. He has not hired an agent, so he maintains his eligibility. At one time, Trey Murphy III was a lottery pick. Okay? Now, his play over the end of the season slipped. I think Trey Murphy Three Sticks would agree with that. And he's gone from being ranked a lottery pick by NBADraft.net, and now he's seen as kind of a second-round pick. Either way, Trey Murphy Three Sticks is going to test the draft waters, not hiring an agent, meaning he can come back to school if he doesn't like where that testing of the draft waters has him pegged. I'll talk about that on the show. We'll talk about Tony Bennett landing a big-time commitment from ECU to play in the front court, to bolster the front court. I mean, the front court with Sam's departure, with Jay Huff's departure, there's a lot of holes to be filled in that front court. This kid, Gardner from ECU, looks like he could fill those holes. And folks, Alex Erpy is going to join us on the show, just one of the mental giants in this community, the CEO of Emergent Financial Services. Chief Executive Officer Alex Erpy will join us in 17 minutes. The lead today, J-Dubs, Judah Wickhauer's our director, has got to be the pausing or the halting of the single-shot Johnson & Johnson COVID vaccine. Early this morning, the FDA recommended that the J&J vaccine be put on ice temporarily because of reports that the J&J caused blood clotting in 6 women, blood clotting issues in 6 women. One of those 6 actually died from this. So the sample size is still very small. Someone dying from this is certainly something we all got to consider. 6 women, blood clotting issues tied directly to the J&J one-shot vaccination. I'm going to ask these questions. What's the impact that this is going to have on confidence for people getting vaccinations moving forward? What's the impact this is going to have on the vaccination supply chain? The other 2 options are 2-shot options, and the other options, we don't have enough vaccinations to make up for J&J not being in the mix right now. So we're going to talk about all this. We'll talk about how this is impacting travel stocks, how this is impacting reopening stocks, how this is impacting airline stocks. First, I want to talk about it from a consumer confidence standpoint. It's no secret of late, the last month or so, consumer confidence is spiking big time. You add spring and warmer weather. You add a lot of people getting the vaccination. You add people eager to get outside and spend the money they save. And the economies are starting to hum. Locally in Charlottesville and Central Virginia and the Commonwealth across the country, consumer confidence is up. The last thing we needed from a consumer confidence standpoint is one of the 3 vaccination options, the one that a lot of people wanted because it's a one-shot one, the Johnson & Johnson, being paused and put on ice. I think individuals who are hesitant to get this vaccine, whether it's hesitancy based on a lack of track record in that there hasn't been a lot of time to test or see the before and after effects, the results of these vaccinations, because they were really rushed to market so quickly to help us get ahead of a pandemic we never knew about. So there's certainly that mindset from individuals. We don't have enough data, and that's why I'm hesitant to take it. There's a very legitimate mindset from many in our black and brown community that are hesitant to take any kind of innovation of modern medicine because of a track record of the American government using the black and brown community as essentially guinea pigs to test this modern innovation, these marvels of modern medicine. So that hesitancy is very backed by merit and decades of mistrust with the government. Now you have the FDA advising states across America to stop using the Johnson & Johnson one-shotter until they get more information. I think that this is going to have a number of effects, folks. It's going to further, it's going to put more tailwinds, more momentum behind the hesitancy to get vaccination with some people. It's going to put more momentum and more tailwinds behind, with the black and brown community saying, look, we told you so, and I understand that. It's going to impact travel and airline and reopening stocks because you're really throttling the supply chain. Now you just got 2 choices, right? I mean, you got what? The Moderna option. You got the AstraZeneca option. And both of these are 2-shot options. The supply chains for vaccinations, they have straight up said, we don't have enough of these two-shot choices to cover the Johnson & Johnson one-shotters that we're not using right now. So the vaccination rollout's going to be a little bit slower. That's a fact, folks. That's a fact. You look at the reopening stocks, and they're taking a little bit of a hit now. And that's reopening the Kohl's, the TJ Maxx, the treasure hunting experience. That's the travel stocks. That's the airline stocks. And of course, they're going to take a little bit of hit. Their business models are tied to in-person experiences, which means they're tied to vaccination in people's arms. This is a topic that is the tip of the iceberg from an impact standpoint. It's going to take a few days, maybe a couple of weeks, for us to truly understand the impact of putting the one-shot Johnson & Johnson on ice for now. Now, you got some people saying it's affected 6 women, and only 6 women. And you got some people saying that only 1 person has died from these side effects. Should we not weigh the overall benefit of the J&J against the impact it's had on 6 women from a blood clot standpoint and 1 death? And I say it's not a zero-sum game. We've got to consider it all. Just like during COVID, we were very much considering deaths, even though the deaths from COVID were a very, very small percentage of cases and a small percentage of hospitalizations. We still had to consider the death, because if it's someone's mom or dad or grandma or grandpa or sibling or child, that impacts them orders of magnitude greater than we would ever know. It's not a zero-sum game. So yes, we have to consider the 6 women and the blood clot issues and the 1 that died. This is a topic that's going to gain some momentum until Johnson & Johnson is able to go on the record and say, we've assessed the issues, our scientists and our research labs have looked into it, And we feel even more confident that this is the way to go, that our vaccine is safe. Alternatively, they could say, we've assessed the issues. Our scientists and doctors have looked into it, and we do not feel comfortable administering this one-shot vaccine anymore. We need to hear from the horse's mouth. And the horse's mouth is Johnson & Johnson itself. And I can assure you that they're working on that PR, that communications, that talk with their doctors and scientists before they get that information out to us, the American public. Heck, the world. Now let's talk about another topic that, if we're not careful, is going to snowball. Let's go to a local topic. The Omni Hotel is suing City Hall and the city of Charlottesville. And they're suing the city of Charlottesville over property assessments. In 2020, the year we just had, Omni is saying that our building, our property, was assessed at $10 million more than it should be. The city of Charlottesville is saying the Omni is assessed at $46 million. The Omni is saying, in the words of Lee Corso, not so fast, my friends. The true value of our hotel is $36 million. That $10 million delta represents a whopping $95,000 check. From a tax standpoint, the Omni would have to cut to City Hall. $95,000 is a lot of money. The Omni is legitimately saying our hotel, our building, our rooms where our guests stay, our restaurant, our bar has not been updated in more than 10 years. And as a result of these lack of updates, we see the value of this building at $36 million and not the $46 million the city is saying it's valued at. Now let's unpack this, because there's a lot of different tentacles or spider webs that are going to come from this story. First, this tentacle, or this spider web. It's rare that you see a luxury hotel going on the record and saying, our rooms, our building, the amenities we offer our guests have not been updated in over 10 years. Decrease the value of our property. It's not as good as what you're saying, right? Normally when you're charging $300, $400, $500, $600 a night, depending the level of suite or hotel room that you book, when you're charging that kind of money, you're usually saying our rooms are the nicest. Our restaurants are the sexiest. We have all the shiny things, all the beautiful things that you would want to stay in this hotel to justify $300 a night, $400 a night, $500 a night. The President's Suite, $600, $700 a night in the Omni. That's normally what you see or hear from a 4 or 5 star hotel. We're the best, we're the sexiest, we're the shiniest. We have the prettiest amenities for our guests, and that's why we can justify these price points. So the Omni is going the flip side of the coin and saying, we haven't updated this joint in 10 plus years. It ain't the shiniest. It ain't the sexiest. Our guests don't have the prettiest and nicest rooms. Our spot ain't worth $46 million, it's $36 million. It's rare you see a hotel diminishing its value from a PR or branding standpoint, but that's what they're doing to try to save the $95K. Next spiderweb, next skeleton or topic that kind of tentacles from this. If the Omni is successful in its lawsuit with the city in fighting its assessment and preserving some of its cash, and we know hotels had tough times in 2020, I can assure you that other commercial landlords in the city of Charlottesville will follow similar suit to what the Omni is doing. So what does this mean for the municipality? Charlottesville's budget strapped because of COVID. Restaurant sales, food sales, retail sales, lodging sales, tourism sales, all that got impacted. They're going to raise taxes on us from a real estate standpoint because the retail, the food, the lodging, the tourism, those sales are down because of COVID-19. If other commercial landlords pursue a similar strategy to the Omni, you've opened Pandora's box for commercial landlords to challenge assessments and minimize tax exposure with city government. I own nearly 20,000 square feet of commercial real estate. I busted my ass to get this commercial real estate. I've taken risks that are obscene, such high risk profiles to get this real estate. I am a small potato when compared to Ludwig Kutner, Alan Kajin, Bill Nichman, Joe Geek, Chris Henry, Mr. Lewis. I am peanuts. But from me personally, I know every 6 months we're somewhere between $12,000 and $15,000 in the tax payments we're making with real estate. Every year between $24,000 and $30,000 with the tax payments we're making in real estate. And you chalk it up to cost of doing business, but you're less likely to chalk it up as the cost of doing business if you see your peers pursuing strategies and tactics to diminish or minimize tax exposure. And that's what the Omni is doing. You got 2 Pandora's boxes that have been opened. The first Pandora's box that was opened by the Omni is diminishing the value of what it offers its customers to save $95,000 in tax exposure. Customers could say, hey, you said your hotel hasn't been updated in 10 plus years. How can you justify $400, $500 a night? And the second Pandora's box that has been opened is with City Hall. If they're not successful in this lawsuit, Alan Kajin is a lawyer. He's one of the largest commercial property owners in the city. He's an attorney that lives in San Francisco, and he's very quick to sue or use legal tactics to get what he wants. I can promise you Alan Kajin is watching this very closely. Take Ix Park. Ludwig Kutner and Alan Kajin own Ix Park. Ix Park is currently being assessed or valued for its potential and not what it actually is. Its potential is a mixed-use development that's anchored by an apartment or condo tower where that art park is located. That's the truest, that is the most lucrative potential or value that piece of property has. It's not the art and the music stage and that eclectic art in that grassy knolled area behind Three Notch. That's not the best way to make money for Ludwig and Alan. The best way Ludwig and Alan can make money if they wanted to was to build apartments and condos right there. Apartments and condos that you can either rent or sell, and you make money off it, and that creates a trickle-over positive impact to all the storefront owners. This eclectic art space and the most valuable some of the most valuable property in the city of Charlottesville, that's not making them any money. However, Ludwig and Allen are taxed on the potential value of the property and not the actual what's happening with the property, this art district. Allen is going to follow this story closely and say, City Hall, look what you did to the Omni, and look what you're doing to us. Give us a tax break as well. And eventually, you could have a domino effect with landlords, commercial owners. And this domino effect could potentially take dollars away from the municipality and its operating budget. And we know the municipality and its operating budget are strapped because of COVID. This is a story that has legs and momentum waiting to happen. All right, a couple more topics before we get to our good buddy Alex Erpy on today's program. The front porch, a positive story. The front porch is back to in-person classes. The front porch is the music school right off the downtown mall. This music school is doing in-person classes in the spring season at Fry Springs Beach Club and at their facility right off the downtown mall. Emily Morrison is a rock star. She's the executive director of the Front Porch. I love seeing the return for in-person classes, and I love the fact that the Front Porch has, knock on wood, withstood this pandemic and is back to being this positive resource for this community. We salute you, Emily, and the Front Porch staff. Now, here's a sad story. Do you have the photo that's been circulating on social media? All right. Look at the screen for those that watch in real time. Look at the screen now. A cyclist died on Ivy Road. It was a two-motorist accident, one cycle crash that happened on the intersection of Ivy Road and Bloomfield Road on Monday, yesterday around 3 p.m. Look at the screen. The cyclist was transported to UVA Medical Center and later died from the injuries from this accident. First, I am a God-fearing man. I say it all the time on the show. I am a God-fearing man. My thoughts and prayers are to this cyclist's family. Second, we must prioritize cyclists and runner safety in this community. We must. It seems like every year we either have a cyclist or a runner die from an accident somewhere in the county. I'm going to do a roundtable on Thursday with Angela Lynn and Nancy Gill. Nancy Gill was the one-time mayor of Scottsville, and Angela Lynn had a cup of coffee with a run for House of Delegates. Angela Lynn, her husband, 2 years ago, was permanently injured with a spinal cord injury after getting in an accident on his bicycle in Albemarle County. Nancy Gill, the former mayor of Scottsville, her 21-year-old niece, a VMI graduate, was killed on her bicycle by a motorist. On Thursday, we're going to do a roundtable based on bicycle and runner safety in Central Virginia. I have heard from so many people to the point where I will add the prioritization of bicycle and runner safety to my campaign for Albemarle County Board of Supervisors. I will prioritize economic growth. I will prioritize supporting small and medium-sized business owners and the job and tax revenue that comes from that support. I will prioritize reliable and ubiquitous transportation across the county and Central Virginia, and maybe it's a public-private partnership that needs to happen. I will prioritize broadband internet. I will prioritize school and early start funding for children, especially school and early start funding for children whose families do not have economic means. I will improve the relationship between the city of Charlottesville and Albemarle County. I will prioritize sports, tourism, and regional tournaments in this area that drive touristic dollars to our community. If you think sports tourism, people come for 4 or 5 days, they stay in hotel rooms, they eat at our restaurants, they are eager to open their wallet and spend money, and then they leave. They don't tax our roads, they don't tax our schools, they leave. And folks, if elected, I will also prioritize bicycle and runner safety across Albemarle. I've been here 21 years, and for 21 years, I have seen or heard or learned about a death or two a year. And a death or two a year is one too many in my book. Alex Erpy, T-minus 30 seconds. Trey Murphy III has declared for the NBA draft. Trey Murphy has not hired an agent so he can return to school if he wants. Mamadi Diakite did this. Okay? Mamadi Diakite did this. Jay Huff did this. It's the right thing for the young man to do. Go get some intelligence and some intel from coaches and scouts. They tell you where you could get drafted. You become a better version of yourself as a basketball player. The coaches and scouts said, you know what, Trey Murphy III, in the back half of the season, you somewhat disappeared. We see a 6'8" frame, and we see long arms equivalent to a 7-foot wingspan. We see that you could run and jump, and you can play defense, and you can attack the rack, and you can shoot the long ball. Trey Murphy III reminds me of DeAndre Hunter. I expect he's going to return to Charlottesville for next season because right now he's pegged at a mid to late second-round draft pick. And one more item out of the notebook before we get to Alex Erpy. ECU transfer Jaden Gardner is now a University of Virginia Wahoo. This guy is 6'7", he's 235 pounds, and immediately he becomes the best front court player for Tony Bennett next year. He averaged 18 points a game and over 8 rebounds a game for the ECU Pirates. This dude can straight up ball. He's built like a man. He is a physical specimen, and he will immediately be in the starting lineup for this basketball team. Tony Bennett's got a transfer from Indiana in the backcourt. He's got a transfer from ECU in the front court. And Trey Murphy's probably going to be in that starting five, a transfer from Rice. Three of the 5 dudes in our starting five next year likely going to be transfers. Say what you want. It's the nature of the beast we're in. Judah Wickower, we have Alex Erpy on the line. And Alex, a lot I want to cover with you on today's program. First, you're freshly manicured. Did Alex Erpy get a haircut?
I did. I got one of my homemade haircuts from Xavier.
Xavier gave you the haircut.
Oh, yeah. He's been doing haircuts in the Erpy family for at least a decade, probably more. Since back when we lived in California, he's been doing haircuts for all members of the Erpy family.
Well, and including Mrs. Erpy.
No, she does his.
Oh, she does his. Gotcha.
Mrs. Erpy goes for her own haircut.
Okay, Mrs. Erpy might be the smartest person in the Erpy family right there. I'm just joking.
Could well be.
I don't know if it's.
Anybody would disagree with that.
I don't know if it's terrifying that I know Alex Erpy got a haircut or not. But this man, I love this guy and I love his brain. I'm going to start open-ended. Johnson & Johnson, the one shot on ice. What'd you make of that?
I was a little surprised to see it this morning because you had been hearing, there had been talk that there were some adverse reactions, but we had heard that with the other vaccines as well. And it had never occurred to me that it would reach the point that they would actually pull that off. Although I know the UK, I think, did something similar for a while with AstraZeneca's vaccine. It's rather disappointing just in the sense that, to your point that I think you were making earlier on at the open of the show, it does cause, I think, some doubt. It'll obviously slow down distribution somewhat because that was a one-shot vaccine. So the hope is that whatever the issues are, that they are not serious. And to be honest, my first thought was just the hopes and prayers that go out to the people that have taken that they don't have any adverse reactions, that there's no future ones now that they've stopped it.
What do you want to see? I mean, I kind of want to see J&J leadership talk with their doctors and their scientists, their research team, get to the bottom of this, and then issue a statement as I want to say quickly, but as methodically as possible, saying, look, we've looked into this. Here's where we stand. It's good to go, or let's pull it off the shelf, per se. What do you want to see?
I'd like to see that. To be honest, I would like to see a little bit of an explanation from the FDA, because as someone who studies, biotech companies a lot in terms of we have a biotech model that we run at our company that looks at the index in a whole. It takes a long time, typically, for any kind of therapeutic, any kind of vaccine to make it to market. You're talking phase 2 and 3 are each a year, maybe a year plus each. And we're talking 6 months here, and this got approved. And so I'd sort of like to see from the FDA, did this not show up in the trials? Is this something you missed? Is this something you should have taken a look at? I think just a little transparency from them, just to understand how this sort of got through the cracks. Because I think it's one thing if it was known, and then they said, this is a known risk. We don't expect it to be a significant one. Go ahead and take the vaccine. It's another when we sort of learn about it after the rollout rather than before the rollout. And so that would be, I think, a little transparency there would be appreciated from me, at least.
I agree. Well said, Alex Zerpe, CEO of Merchant Financial Services. I'm seeing Delta down, Delta Airlines. I'm seeing Carnival down. I'm seeing the airline stocks down. I'm seeing some of these reopening stocks down. My treasure hunting experience stocks, the Coles are down. Is this directly attributed to this J&J news?
It's tough. I mean, there's the two big pieces of news today. I think the biggest one is J&J. The other one is just the deficit piece, and I think sometimes that can spook the markets a little bit, because then they worry that what will the Federal Reserve do in terms of between the deficit and inflation? How will they decide which of those to prioritize a little bit? But I definitely think, especially with the airlines, I don't know if you saw, but Hawaiian Airlines, I was surprised to see, is basically saying that their miles, that I guess the airlines, how they give you the miles to, they're basically going to be indeterminate. Like, you can keep them forever. I guess as a way to try to get people to use that airline, you'll never lose them. And so I think they're really struggling to find ways to get people to travel. And it's a challenge, I think, firstly because of the vaccine uncertainty now with this Johnson & Johnson. And also, I think, and we've discussed this before, still a lot of uncertainty as to what you can do after you've taken the vaccine, what you're encouraged to do by the CDC, and what you're told not to do by the CDC, even after having taken one. Because I know a lot of people that they've taken their vaccine, and they're still getting messages from the people that they've talked to saying, no, still don't travel, don't go out to eat, which still puts a damper on a lot of these industries.
I mean, it's like, Alex, I'm going to throw this to you. The messaging is so mixed. Like, we get some, it's like, if you've been vaccinated, you can be around other people that have been vaccinated without your mask on. Then we hear that the J&J may cause issues. And then we hear that, last week it was okay to get on an airplane and to travel abroad if you've been vaccinated. I mean, I feel like, and maybe this is just the nature of a pandemic that we've never seen before. I don't know if you guys feel this way as well, viewers and listeners, but I feel like every day it's like a different piece of confusing news that's in the news cycle.
It does seem like that, and I think we're seeing that reflected in the markets. Remember, the stock market is always a forward-looking entity. It's not what has happened before or what's happening today. It's always, what do I think is going to happen tomorrow? And confusion and uncertainty breed, well, if I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, how can I make a rational investment decision? So let me pull back, let me hold back. And that affects a lot of these industries. I mean, if we had a clear path in terms of not only what vaccination will look like in terms of how many Americans will be vaccinated, but also what that vaccination will mean in terms of travel and recreation and where you can go out to eat, then I think you might see some investors saying, well, okay, given this timeline, I am ready to invest in an American Airlines, or I'm ready to go back into retail and hospitality. But if we don't know the answers to all these questions, we really can't make the equation, right? We could sit there and say, well, I expect 60, 70% of the country to be vaccinated by August. But what does that mean in terms of economic behavior? Because there's sort of a gap there between what does that mean in terms of what people can do, and will people travel? And even if the CDC comes out and tells people you can travel, are people going to be still so nervous, fearing that, well, even the vaccine, I might still get the disease, I might still pass it to someone else? And I think the mixed messaging does make it very difficult, just from an economic perspective, really to get our heads around what's going to happen. And if you don't know what's going to happen, it's tough to make investment decisions based on that.
Well, then how do you forecast? What's the best way to forecast here to hedge risk?
To hedge risk? I mean, I think we're seeing it. If you think about what we've seen the beginning of this year with the flow back into the value stocks, that's usually, for me at least, I tend to see that as a flight to safety. In other words, I have no idea what's going to happen. Let me get to it's funny, I would have said let me get to my Johnson & Johnson, but obviously that's not happening today. But let me get to my safe, stable, dividend-paying companies, because I don't want to take any chances. So I'm going to go into that. But as you can't go in, typically you would have gone into bonds. That's your typical flight to safety. But we all know the yields on bonds are so low that dividend-paying stocks tend to be a very flight to safety place to go. And I think we're seeing that this year, because sometimes that's what you can do. You still want to be in the market, but I think a lot of investors become conservative in how they approach how far out on the risk spectrum they want to go. And we've seen that, I think, with just the way that tech has sort of come back, and a lot of those ones that lagged last year, those really safe stocks, have seen, I just want my dividend. Just pay me my 2 to 3% dividend, and then I'll go back into the market when I'm ready.
Alex Erpy, our guest, CEO, Emergent Financial Services. We love this guy at this network. Super smart dude. Travel. Let's go first to travel stocks. Are you bullish airlines? Are you bullish manufacturers like Boeing? Or are you wait and see mentality here?
I'm a bit of a wait and see myself. I'm a big believer in being in everything. So we haven't necessarily pulled our clients out of these things. We're still in them through other ETFs, through a diversified portfolio. So I wouldn't tell people, oh, make sure your portfolio doesn't have airlines, or make sure it doesn't have Boeing, right? But I wouldn't, in other words, go into that extra. I wouldn't put a higher allocation to airlines and Boeing right now, trying to time this, because I think it's going to be very difficult to time. I'm not a big, at Emergent, we're not big fans of market timing in general, just because I recall reading back when I was studying for my CFA that the best stock pickers in terms of like timing when to buy, when to go in, when to go out on a short-term basis, they're about as good as the guys that you see on TV pitching the next NFL, the winners of the games on Sunday for football games. So it's a very low percentage. It's hard to be good at it even if you're the best, right? So that's always a challenge with market timing, but I especially wouldn't try to time this with so much uncertainty, just because looking forward, I'm just not seeing the scenario whereby even if we hit high vaccination levels where we're being encouraged to actually travel. It seems like we're being told to still don't do it, even if you've been vaccinated. And I think the problem is, how do you sort of take that away once the time comes, when you've sort of put us in the habit of don't travel, stay at home, even if you're vaccinated. When do people then trust the government to say, okay, now enough of you have been vaccinated, that go travel, go out there, you're not at any risk anymore, when we've been told that there is risk. So I think it's a challenge to see how that's going to recover short of consumer confidence in travel and in being out has recovered. And I think that depends a lot on where you are right now.
More bullish on airlines or cruise ships? A Carnival or a Delta?
That's a tough one. If I just going on my own personal opinion, my suspicion would be airlines first, just as I think business travel may return. Nobody goes on a business trip on a cruise ship, and business travel may have to return even before other types of travel.
You think so? You think so?
Home, I do, because I mean, we may be working at home, and maybe this is just my old-fashioned philosophy here, but connections, business-wise, are made in person. If you really want to close a deal, it's very hard to seal a deal with someone on a phone call. And my suspicion is also hard on a Zoom call.
Yeah. Well, and
so
let everybody know that phrase you did with virtual. Because I love that phrase you use.
Yes. No, the way I always state it is that the original meaning of virtual is almost as good, but not quite as good as. Because the same way you do with, like, if I say that, someone's virtually a genius, I mean they're not really a genius. They're just somewhat like a genius. So virtual in terms of Zoom and virtual communication with people is good, but not as good as real communication. I think at some point the real one is going to have to come back, and my suspicion is business will do it first and say, what, there's dollars to be made here, get on the airplane post-vaccination, and people maybe, I don't know if I want to go on a cruise yet.
Okay. I figured you would say airline over cruises. I agree with you. Here's the next one. Airlines versus reopening retail. You got your TJ, you got your Kohl's, your Marshalls in there. They took a serious hit, obviously, during the pandemic in 2020. Airlines versus reopening retail. Which one you like more and why?
I'm really playing with the trivia. I feel like I'm on Trivial Pursuit on this one today. No, I mean, that's a tricky one because my question, I think I might even rephrase it as the big question for me with retail is, given what we saw with the explosion of Amazon and the online retailing last year, does retail come back at all, in a sense? Have people permanently shifted their behavior to buying online, or are they going to be craving, I want to go back and shop in the store? And I think if the behavior hasn't completely shifted, I might even say the stores would come back first, just as I've seen, just anecdotally, I feel like I've seen somewhat of a comfort level with people going into retail stores just here in local community in Charlottesville that I've seen. And people already, I think there's a certain comfort level with going into a grocery store, a Lowe's, that kind of store that will translate faster than getting into an enclosed space in an airplane. And you don't have the issue of, I need to be sitting 6 hours on a plane with a mask that makes it difficult to breathe. Whereas at a retail store, I can spend as much time in there as I want, or I can spend as little time in there as I want. So anecdotally, I suspect retail, but I think long-term for me, the big question I would say is what happens long-term with retail if people have permanently shifted to buying everything online and getting it shipped to them within 1 to 2 days.
Last one for the Trivial Pursuit closing here. I agree with everything he said. How about the publicly traded restaurants? And there's two different kinds. We got your Chipotle's, your Papa John's, and your Domino's. Those are in fuego. Those are crushing it. They're in fuego. COVID's been good to them. They have the digital technology with the apps and the curbside. And let's be honest, takeout and delivery, pizza's made for that. Pizza's absolutely made for that. The other group of publicly traded restaurants are like your Darden restaurant group, your sit-down restaurants here. I think they own a 700 plus Olive Gardens. Yep. Yeah, 700 plus Olive Gardens. So the sit-down restaurant versus the reopening retail, TJ Maxx, Kohl's, Marshalls. Versus
the sit-down restaurant. That's an interesting one. I'm not sure that I would be able to easily pick between them, and just in the sense that I'm still getting the mixed messaging on the sit-down restaurants in terms of, is it actually safe to go to a sit-down restaurant in terms of what the official authorities are telling people. And so that seems to be putting a little bit of a damper on that. And I haven't heard that mixed messaging with retail. You don't often hear the CDC say, don't go retail shopping after you've been vaccinated. But we did just hear them say, or at least I heard on the news that the head of the NIH was saying, don't go to a restaurant post-vaccination. So that's going to turn instantly a lot of people off going to a sit-down restaurant even after they've been vaccinated. So I worry about that in that sense that it seems to me that in terms of just what the health authorities are saying, they seem to be laying off, don't go retail shopping, and laying it on, don't go to a sit-down restaurant. And so I wonder if that will affect the restaurant slightly more, even if I think the long-term prospects for retail shopping are more questionable. Because I think you can't replicate.
You can't you can't buy a cheeseburger or unlimited breadsticks at Olive Garden through Amazon.
Exactly. I think long-term sit-down will come back. Because I think there's something to be said about there's the experience of going out to eat in a restaurant. You know, whether it's a big chain or whether it's a local, I think there's an experience there that people enjoy, especially when you'll be able to get together with other people that are not part of your household, in the sense of meeting friends at a restaurant and doing those recreational activities. I think that can't be replicated. Whereas retail shopping, depending on if it's a Kohl's or a TJ Maxx, that a little bit can be replicated by Amazon. Maybe not 100%, but years ago I would have told you can't replicate buying shoes online, and then they went and replicated buying shoes online.
Dude, I love this guy. He had no prep. He knew none of these topics before this interview and just hit a grand slam like he always does on Tuesdays. And you really want to see a grand slam? Thursdays at 10:15 a.m., Today y Mañana. Give us a snapshot what you guys have planned.
Oh, today it's going to be a blast on Thursday. We're going to have on Lily DeRay. So she is, she does so much that we couldn't even think of a title for her. Because she is in so many things. You know, everybody's not like CEO of this, or he's in singer-songwriter. And we couldn't even go for a title because, she's a singer-songwriter. She's involved. She has business acumen that she's been involved in. You'll see her doing T-shirts. She has experience. Boys and Girls Club, they love her there. She's had experience in so many places, does so many things. So I think she's going to be a real blast. She's been at the Common House for the people that have been able to enjoy her there on the first Wednesday, I think, of every month. For members there performing on the rooftop that they have at the Common House. So we're just going to be talking what she's gone through in business, what her thoughts are being in entrepreneurship, especially. And I think it'll be fascinating, at least for me, that field that she's in terms of not just singing, songwriting, but also performing, but also having a record label. There's so much that goes into that industry that I think will be fascinating, not just for me, but for the viewers out there. How do you navigate that in this environment, and how does entrepreneurship come into play there when you're doing something that I think people think of as artistic, but there's a whole business side that you have to be really good at. You have to really think about how you're going to grow your brand, even in the art, what people would traditionally think of as an art space. And because artists are entrepreneurs as well.
It's a brand.
It is. So I think you've had her on.
She's amazing
before as well. So she's just a blast to talk to and really gain insight from. So it's going to be a lot of fun.
Lily DeRay, guys, on Thursday, Today y Mañana. It's 10:15 a.m. on the I Love CVille Network. The most challenging question I have is the last question. Xavier Urpy, when he's cutting the Urpy men's hair, who's the most difficult one to cut and who's the easiest?
Oh, I would say, so the easiest is, I would guess, for me, I feel like I'm the easiest in the summer.
Okay.
Because in the summer, I basically go to my father and say, buzz this thing, just
give it short.
Take it all off. Well, actually, no. To be fair, Nick is the easiest now because Nick has no hair.
There you go. I thought that's what you were going to say, Alex.
That's true. I completely forgot.
I thought you were going to say that.
Our social media ninja is hairless, so he has his thick beard, but my dad doesn't do that one. So he's the easiest, and I'll take number 2.
Okay, there you go. Well, tell Xavier that he did a hell of a job. You're looking sharp. I can't wait to see you guys on Thursday. Hey, thank you, my friend. You're amazing every time.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it.
You have a good one.
You too.
Thank you. Alex Urpy, guys, CEO, Emergent Financial Services. He is the CEO of Emergent Financial Services, a family-owned firm, trusted family-owned firm. All the Urpys as high integrity and character as you're going to find out there. And I have nothing but love and respect for those gentlemen. I can't wait to meet Mrs. Urpy. I want to meet Mrs. Urpy. I would love to meet Mrs. Urpy. I hear so many amazing things about her. I would love to meet Mrs. Urpy. That's the show, guys. I'm grateful for you guys watching. We are back tomorrow at 12:30. Thursday's roundtable, cycling and runner safety, is something that you're going to want to watch. Please. We have to figure this out. I mean, why don't I close with this? You go around the city of Charlottesville, and much of the city of Charlottesville has bike lanes that are for bicycles. You got them down West Main, around the downtown mall, South Street. The main thoroughfares in the city of Charlottesville have clearly marked and clearly cut and clearly allocated bicycle lanes. You go around Albemarle County, do you see bike lanes around Albemarle County? I don't see them. Am I missing something? Why does it seem to be a prioritization for bicycle and runner safety with the allocation of bicycle lanes in the city, but not the same prioritization or the same allocation of bicycle and running lanes in the county? What am I missing here? Most of us don't even know where that invisible line we cross from city to Albemarle is located. And I would imagine quite a few bicycle riders and cyclists and runners are going from city to county in their exercise or in their methods of transportation. If we're going to prioritize transportation that doesn't create a negative impact on the environment, and running and bicycling certainly fall into those categories, shouldn't we give the infrastructure to encourage safety, to create safety, and to encourage more participation? Doesn't this seem like a freaking no-brainer? Like, it's the type of mentality, I feel like this common sense mentality to governance, I just feel like it's lost. I mean, the common sense to me would be make sure you have bicycle lanes around Albemarle in highly visible and high areas where people are utilizing bicycles and running. But that's not what's happening. We'll dig deeper on that on Thursday's show with the former mayor of Scottsville, Virginia, and with two women who've been impacted from a spinal cord injury, a husband, and from a death of a niece on Thursday's show. My name is Jerry Miller. It's the I Love Seville show. Thank you for joining us.